Hey, Jeff Fuller back with you. You are listening to Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube, the Facebook group, Instagram, and Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to YouTube, Jay Fuller Interviews, and join the Facebook group, Jay Fuller Interviews as well. This is now on Google Podcasts as well as iTunes as the Backfire Podcast with Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews, because I believe people's stories will make our story better, less ignorant, more impactful if we would just sit and listen. And one coming to us now with a great story is Coach Adam Hooker. Coach, how are you?
I'm great, but you just put the pressure on. You said it was a great story, so now you got to produce something.
Hey, man, it's just everybody's story has something to tell. And you grew up in Kansas, is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised in Kansas City.
So were you more the city feel, or were you in the suburbs? Where
yeah, suburbs away to Kansas. Yeah.
And so
when I went in my time in Colorado, I tried to get people to understand the difference between being from Kansas City and being from Kansas.
Yeah,
and because they all just picture like Western Kansas is, and I'm from Johnson County, Kansas, a little different experience. I'm a little bit more of a city boy that's kind of adjusting to life out here in the country, and it's been great so far.
So did you grow up with siblings?
No, I'm an only child, spoiled proper.
And for you, where did your love of sports begin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my dad and I, went to games as far back as I can remember. I think some of it just was, an innate love of games and competition and sport. But I think some of it probably was a little bit of a connection point with my dad, going to the games with him, and then the neighborhood is what we did. I mean, I grew up in the 80s where we went outside and first thing in the morning, and when the street lights came on, that's when we went back home. And we were playing basketball and stickball and wiffle ball and football without the pads and just killing each other, and home runs were the train tracks, and we just it's all we did all day long. So it became a part of kind of my fiber of with my friendships and my family and everything.
So, and I'm of the age now where I did not grow up with cell phones or the internet. That's something that I take delight in now. But it seemed like when we went to the park, people were always there playing. And now sometimes I know for my kids and for the kids that I coach and I'm a part of at the high school level, unless there's a scoreboard, which I think it's good to keep score, and referees, kids don't want to play. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I hate to sound like the get off my lawn guy, but I think a lot of it is just this electronic age we're in. Just there's so much available at their fingertips on a phone. PlayStations are awesome, and all that. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think it's just kind of, been a cultural shift a little bit with some of that, sort of thing. Because, we did. I mean, I was an only child. I was very well taken care of by my parents. I had a million toys. I had my own little world. And I think it fed a lot of my creativity, which led to, another career I was in for a while. And then my other option was to go outside, get dirty and play. And sometimes a lack of options, prompts a lot of, more creative thinking, and as we were finding ways to stay entertained and not bored, and we played sports. That was kind of our main thing.
So again, Coach Adam Hooker, making some time, Coach Hooker on Twitter. Did you grow up with a best friend, or did you grow up with a group of friends, just being an only child?
Yeah, sure. I've always kind of been a little bit of both. I mean, I've always been friends with a lot of people, but I've always had, one or two, really, really close best friends. I mean, my childhood, Nick Beck was my guy. He was my brother, and we did everything together. And I had, we ended up going to, getting a little off there for a little while. We were different grades, and my buddy Richard in high school and I got awful tight, and then my roommates and such in college. And so I always had my kind of intimate friendship group, but then I've always had, just a plethora of friends beyond that. And I've always just, I love people. And it's one thing that's also special about the sports world is you get a lot of different little family units over the course of your years. And so I probably dig into that a little bit more deeply than some, just because I don't have the siblings and that they represent just so much to me in that friend group. And then also I was blessed with just a tremendous extended family, and my cousins were like my brothers and sisters, for sure. And so we're very unusually close. So I mean, I've had no shortage of companionship and love in my life. I've been very blessed in that regard.
What was your high school basketball experience like?
Not good. Some of that I mean, I'm not going to say I saw eye to eye always with the coach, but most of that was self-inflicted. I'm not very shy about this when I talk to my players and my students. Academically, I was not good in the sense that I love school, absolutely love school. I love learning. Big fan of the community of it, the culture of it. I love everything about school except for the work. And the busy work, as I used to call it. Now, if we're going to do a test, I'm going to beat you because my competitive juices come out. If we're going to do a big project, my project's going to be better than yours. If we're going to write a paper, mine's going to move you to tears. But if you want me to go home and just do a bunch of little homework assignments, at this point in my life, I was very, very undisciplined, and I thought I was so smart that I could just do just enough to get by. And I did just enough to get by to eventually graduate, but not enough to stay eligible most of the time. And I caused myself and my coaches a lot of grief throughout that period of time.
So it's funny you mentioned that because my grades actually went up during basketball season. I was probably a little bit lazy, but I just wanted to play. So I would put in that work to get those decent grades to play. How did that affect you with your dream of playing in college? Or when you were in high school, did you have a dream of playing in college?
Yeah, I think I was far too content on too many levels at that point. I had a wonderful family, great friends, was thoroughly enjoying my high school experience as a whole. And I was too much in the moment, I think, at times. I don't know if I set the proper goals. I think I just had this kind of very immature idea that things were just going to work out, and I didn't have to necessarily make sure that they worked out, and they would just kind of fall in my lap. It was a little too easy. It was something we at that age, a lot of us think we can just turn it on at any time, and we even see that in practice with the guys. Sometimes guys, we got to practice the way we play, and then there's that mentality that they'll just turn it on game day, and some guys can. But it came to just to turn things on to get done. Sometimes it wasn't there for me because I was just building some really terrible habits, and it plagued me for a while. And I think it's at the time I look back and there's a level of regret, but then I realized that my goals really were never as much about the playing side as I always, from a very, very young age, felt I was being called to coach. And I think I probably took the playing days for granted a little bit, but I think by making some of the mistakes I did, and then also rectifying them and being able to do what I've been able to do, it's made me a better teacher, a better coach, a better father, a better mentor, because I've been kind of on both ends. I've been the delinquent that flunked out, and I've been the guy that made straight A's and did well and became a teacher of all things. So I've literally been on both ends of that spectrum, and I think it allows me to relate to my kids in a little different way. So God's plan is perfect, and mine was very much flawed, but I appreciate all my screw ups back then.
So Coach Adam Hooker makes up time from Sterling College. This is not a trap question, but I will just say measure your words, because it seems as though, and I'm still trying to figure out this whole conversation and discussion, but do you think some of that, so many options came because of what people call white privilege now, and then you just had to dig into what really matters?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that there's not a level of that, because sure there was. I mean, the frustrating thing for me is probably not living up to the ideals and model of my parents. My dad came from nothing, out in Missouri, and he was a good old country boy, and had to work his way up. And my mom, was one of five. With a Nazarene pastor dad up in Iowa. They didn't have anything. I mean, she tells stories when they'd go out hiking in Colorado and they'd have to go barefoot because they only had one pair of nice shoes, and their backpacks were cereal boxes with ropes on them, so they could go carry their snacks with them. And their big treat was to put some orange juice in there, so when they got to the top of the mountain, they could put some snow in the orange juice, and they had orange juice slushies. Wow. And then I've got my dad again. It came from very, very modest means, and when we started out as a family, fairly modest, but then he worked ridiculously hard and ended up being very, very successful in his business and made decent money there at the end. And I think I benefited from their hard work in the sense that I had everything that I needed at that point, but I wasn't learning properly and understanding the struggle as far as where they'd come from and where they'd gone. So I don't think that my parents were necessarily products of white privilege, but I sure as heck think that their son was at that point. Yeah. Absolutely. Now I had I went to a very diverse high school and had a tremendous diverse friend base. But again, I don't know that I was fully aware of just how good I had it at times.
Wow.
Because I was being sheltered by a whole lot of love, and so I thought I knew. And looking back, I definitely benefited from some things for sure.
Let's fast forward from that point to when you go to Mid-America Nazarene. What did you know about Mid-America Nazarene? As I mentioned off air, I was a Nazarene youth pastor for a little bit, so they certainly promote their schools, institutions of higher learning. Did you feel like you had to go to a Nazarene college?
No, not at all. I mean, it was definitely always going to be one of the finalists for sure. A few things factored in. I mean, I had the majority of my family's gone there, so there was a connection there. I grew up going to the games there in Old Land Memorial Gymnasium, and amazing atmosphere, and just it was very infectious, and became a part of just our life as a family. And I had an insane affinity towards Coach Lamar over there, and definitely had some dreams there of someday connecting with him. Again, I didn't really understand what that meant at that point, as testament to my academic failures and such. But no, that was definitely always up there. I mean, and then I'm a big KU Jayhawk fan and all those different things. And I had other schools and other states that I was talking to, and that were options as well. But at the end of the day, that made the most sense for me and my family. And I would do it over 1,000 times.
Coach, how tall are you?
6'3".
Explain your game a little bit.
At this point or that point, back in the day, I was a good shooter, but I didn't get a play out there where I was most comfortable most of the time. They stuck me inside a lot, but I was also a beanpole. I was about as skinny as they could. I could hula hoop a Cheerio. It was pretty cool. But I learned some good post moves. I had a little baby hook, could do some things like that. I was a smart player, not very athletic. I dunked my first time my senior year of high school. I dunked my last time in my freshman year of college. Injuries kind of took the rest of that. I never had much to begin with, but in my AAU days, I was able to step out and I shot the ball a lot. And when I was playing with my school teams, I got stuck inside a lot, and I learned how to play dirty and throw around my 170 pounds as best I could. And my freshman 15 was a good thing. It helped me a lot. And then when I get to the college level, and then all of a sudden you realize 6'3" is not tall anymore, and had to learn a lot of ball skills that I did not have back in the day. And you have to learn to be a little bit more versatile, and that took me a while. And I was probably the best skill wise I ever was, probably at 30, not back in when I really had a body and some opportunity. It took me a while to kind of get to where I could really understand how the game worked, and now it's. I'm getting to the other extreme where my body doesn't work at all and I can't play anymore. But I had a little sweet spot in there, which was kind of nice. But
And you mentioned a little bit about how you always felt or knew that you were going to coach. When you were in college, did that really cement itself of something you wanted to do, or did you kind of pull back and pull away from basketball at times?
No, it definitely solidified it. I think it was God. Was present in so many different ways that this was just where we were supposed to be. And I think even my wife would attest to that, and just the conversations that we had, and the partnership we've had in this mission to kind of it's our mission field, if you will, and so there was never really much doubt. A lot of hard work, and we went through a lot, kind of building the resume and all that sort of thing. There were times along that journey that I wondered a little bit. I'm like, man, did I really feel God's calling, or did I just have some bad Taco Bell or something? So you always have those moments, but the predominant feeling and motivation and calling has always been there, I believe.
And Ian Cunningham introduced us Kenny Anderson Showcase. Ian is a tremendous guy, and it just cracks me up that he's a soccer player that really didn't know Kenny Anderson, the basketball player. He just knew, he saw a documentary, Mr. Chips, on Amazon Prime, and he really enjoyed it and reached out to Kenny. And now you guys have the third showcase coming up in the spring. Pretty phenomenal. Can you just talk about that opportunity you've had to get to know Ian Cunningham, but to be a part of the Kenny Anderson Showcase? Yeah,
sure. No, I mean, what a guy, huh? And he tweets a lot, but one thing he always talks about is real is real, and how rare that is, and that's a real dude. So no, he's a great guy, and the first time that he and I connected on the phone, I think we got each other kind of excited. he kind of inspired me, and I kind of, and likewise, I'm very, very passionate about small college basketball. I mean, like a little over the top, insanely passionate about it. And to have somebody that wants to invest in opportunities for young men, first of all, but also, one of those taglines is, the big showcase for the small, schools, that, you're hitting my two sweet spots right there is reaching out to kids and what this level represents to so many people. And so the combination of his genuineness and, what we're trying to do with that showcase, it's all, it's pretty special to be a part of, for sure.
And you're now at Sterling, sterling.edu. And here in Vermont, we have a lot of smaller schools. Of course, the University of Vermont, that the claim to fame. I mean, we have a decent program, but for the America East, I was told the America East is the worst division in all of Division I. So I don't know what to say about that. But there's a lot of small college basketball that is just great to see. And you see athletes compete, but you see kids get opportunity to go to school by using a sport that kind of helps you, whether they get a scholarship or not. It's just that incentive to be a part of something larger. Before we share much about the coaching aspect, I also wanted to bring up that you said small college basketball. My brother-in-law and wife went to Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a great D2 NAIA program. I know NAIA is going straight one division now. Mm-hmm. And you guys are part of the NAIA. Can you just share a little bit about the SC Warriors?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you talk about Cornerstone. I mean, that's an unbelievable program up there. That's one of the cornerstone programs of the NAIA. They've been phenomenal for an awful long time. No, I mean, NAIA our tournament's actually older than the NCAA tournament. And I think sometimes people just don't really understand truly what we are. There's not as much money in the NAIA as there is in the NCAA. And that's the biggest issue I think we face is we can't compete on a marketing level. In terms of, though, quality of education, quality of mission, quality of basketball, it's incredibly high. For the most part, you're going to see, most of your D1s are going to be a step above us. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that by any stretch, but I'm telling you right now, we've got a lot of colleagues that have been taking a lot of D1s down lately. Like Washington Adventist knocked off 2 guys last year. I even sent them a tweet and said, hey, I appreciate that. It makes us look good. But some phenomenal coaches at this level just doing great things. The majority of D2 NCAA and the majority of NAIA, there's very, very little separation, in my opinion. The high end D2s, I think, are going to be a little bit, above us, and the low end NAIs are probably going to be a little below that. But the heart of both of those are pretty much in the same level, and I don't think people realize that, and really just how much there is to offer. And the other thing is, about 5% of high school kids get to go play at the next level, at a high level. There's only so many opportunities at D1. There's only so many opportunities at those high profile D2s. There's a tremendous amount of talent that hits these levels, and I think a lot of times people will then go, well, yeah, they're really good, but they're just a bunch of little short guys that'll be great at Lifetime Fitness someday. Well, my front line, I've got 6'10", 7'1". I had a guy with almost 50-inch vertical last year. We got some freaks at this level too. It's just about, it's about fit, it's about opportunity, and really what's best for those kids. And it's not always just those big schools. And sometimes I wish we could get the message out on the NAIA a little bit better, and especially here at SC, where we can help our recruiting machine a little bit. But
yeah, no, that's a great point. I do have a question for you. Somebody told me the main difference or big difference between Division I or the other levels is the depth of the bench, whereas you can have some D1 players talent at different schools, but when you get down to the 8th, 9th guy, the places where I get cut, those are not the same level that you find at higher programs. Would you agree with that? Why is that?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, like you could look at, again, I love my Jayhawks, but I mean, if you look at the bottom end of their bench, a lot of times you'll have just a lot of high academic walk-on type guys that would actually struggle to, sometimes to get some big minutes at some of these schools. So not necessarily. I think some of it boils down to what your kind of scholarship philosophy is. Your bigger schools, they're just dishing out, full rides to everybody. There are some full rides at the NAIA level. There's in other levels, but not all of us have those. And so a lot of times you're dealing with a lot of partial scholarships. But if you go, hey, I've got 5 full rides, and you throw those all into 5 guys, do you have much, scholarship allotment to really bring in much depth? So in those situations, maybe not. We're a little bit more balanced in our scholarship program. So I actually think we have a tremendous amount of balance within my program. But sometimes that's good or bad. I mentioned on media day, we either have a whole lot of depth because we got a lot of talent, or we got a whole lot of depth because we don't have enough. But however you look at it, we have a lot of, we're pretty balanced. And I think what we're trying to do anyway, and again, this is a philosophical approach. I think one of the most under-taught skills in all of sports, especially basketball, is competitiveness. I think that we're just missing that. There's so much entitlement these days. There's so much where we want things to be promised to us. We want to just have this nice, comfortable thing. Well, we're preaching, let's get comfortable with the uncomfortable around here. We want to have a very competitive environment where we have honestly more good players than we should, because I'm only going to play 8 to 10. But we're going to have, between our varsity reserve program and our varsity program, we're going to have, close to 30 players total. And I want them, just trying to beat each other silly as much as they can. Now, we got to watch the culture with that. But it's biblical that iron sharpens iron. And we're trying to have that type of mentality here. So we think our depth might be a little bit better than some, but it's also a strategic, advantage of us where we're just trying to just be, insanely competitive. And that's part of that culture.
Yeah, so good. And I just finished the book Grit, and it just talks a lot about that, and just to press in and just to know that there is going to be a better outcome if people really put in the time. Something that I look at you guys and some of the small programs, I mean, even the large programs, but recruiting, travel, COVID, it kind of helps because, I mean, you can't travel as much maybe, but how much does that weigh on you, just the recruitment process?
A lot. I mean, it's a two-edged sword. Well, first, let me just say this. I actually love recruiting. A lot of coaches don't. They'll talk about this is the thing that they hate the most. Now, it is grueling, but I love the art and the science of building a program. So there's a part of that I really do love. I love turning over a rock and find some guys that other guys didn't maybe find. It's harder to find those rocks these days with social media because everybody's out there, for everybody. But in terms of, the pressure of recruiting, I talk about my guys, I want them to be competitive. I'm insanely competitive. I mean, if we're playing tiddlywinks, I'm throwing elbows, I'm trying to beat you. So there's a part there where you feel a lot of pressure to really, nail the right guys because you want to stink and win, and we want to win. Yeah. And then there's also the small college reality that, athletics is the lifeblood of most of these small colleges. I mean, we've been around since 1887. 85% of our campus is student athletes. If we're not recruiting the right people, if we're not recruiting guys that are going to, bring the right character and be a part of that community, if we're not, having good, keeping people who are on campus and they're not bailing on us and those different types of things, it's not good financially for us either. And so that causes a lot of issues. And there's Joe Biden's fly. And so we've got to really, kind of take some serious pressure on our backs to make sure that we're doing right by our schools as well. Now, I'm not going to do what a few schools out there do, where we just go try to do a numbers grab type of thing. We're only going to do it for the right reasons. And so, we've got student assistants, we got student managers, we've got a coaching mentorship program that we're putting in. We don't want to just bring in a whole bunch of guys, and when we know that many guys just can't play. We took our varsity reserve program, we cut it into 2 different rosters, and built 2 nice schedules there. So if you're playing, if you're suiting up here, you're going to play a lot of basketball. And if you're not playing basketball, you're probably in one of these other roles. So we're trying to really be responsible with that, but we do have, again, a responsibility to our campus to make sure we're doing right by the school. And it is a lot of stinking pressure. And then the COVID, aspects made things a little bit more complicated, and everybody's anxiety across the nation on that's a little bit higher. And it's been a long few months.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about that. I'm now with the Wesleyan denomination, kind of sister to the Nazarenes, and I know some of our schools are talking about the difficulty of possibly not having winter sports and what that's going to do to the campus feel, but also just the overall education of the kids and the institution itself.
Sure.
How is Sterling doing with all things COVID? We're
doing awesome compared to most. I mean, so we've had issues like anybody. We were blessed with a pretty wonderful endowment gift here this past year, which took a little pressure off. But I mean, there's been colleges closing down their doors, across the country. I've got a good friend of mine that had been coaching at a D3, a head football coach for, I want to say, about a decade, and they closed their doors forever, and through all this, so a lot of tension through this deal. But I think we're in a really strong spot compared to a lot of our colleagues and such, and so I feel good about where we're at. But it's a scary thing. I mean, we can't really afford to not be here. We need to be here, and I think our leadership, from our president to our athletic director, and then our head of athletic training, who's on a lot of the boards and those sort of things, we've been very responsible but very decisive. And there's been a lot of wishy-washy leadership through this process, across the nation. But I think our leadership in particular has been really, walking that line, almost perfectly, if you can. I mean, there's no perfect, answer to any of this stuff. But in terms of being really clear and decisive with a plan, we've been able to actually, I think, survive it a little bit better than some, and we're in a pretty good spot right now, I think. I mean, we're constantly knocking on wood, and we're praying every single day that, things don't take a funky, weird turn for the worst. And we can only control so much at the collegiate level, and there's county and national issues. But I think we've been doing great.
So we have Coach Hooker on Twitter at Coach Hooker at Sterling College. Making some time. We have a couple questions, then we'll get you out. You mentioned so much about being competitive and wanting competitors on your team. What about your staff? Does that make you nervous if your staff gets too competitive, or what do you look for in assistants?
Good question. Fill in the gaps and compliment me. I think if you surround yourself with a bunch of mini-me's and too similar of voices, you're not balancing your program the way you need to. And then we talk so much in education about all the different learning types that a student has. I don't know that we always think about those terms in terms of coaching. There's a lot of different ways that players learn, and we have a very diverse program in school. We're actually, of our 13 conference schools, we're the most diverse and student body in the conference. We can't just sit there and approach every single person with the same type of approach. And so I want coaches that balance me, that balance out our program, that give me different opportunities to reach these kids in a powerful way, both academically, athletically, but also for Christ. And so yes, I want competitors, and that's the thing. I want very different voices. I want different backgrounds, but I want the same message, the same vision, and I do expect some joint loyalty amongst us all. There's a beautiful part of ambition, but there can also be a dangerous part of it. And so I think we are. I told my top assistant this last night on our way out the door late at night, because that's what we do. That I really think we've got as good a staff at this level as you could possibly have. In terms of what all the things that we bring to the table, and how we complement one another. Just really, really, really proud of what we're building here.
It's really good. And you're married, you have 4 kids. Is that correct? How do you keep up with everything that's taking place with family, homeschooling, but also what you're trying to accomplish at Sterling College?
It's hard. It's hard. I've been asked for many, many, many years, how do you do it? And we're not really sure. We just find a way. Now, the main thing is, again, my wife is extraordinary and does a million things for us. And so that's huge. My mom's actually been living with us the past couple of years, and she's a big benefit, in terms of what she's able to, bring to the table. Bless her heart. We were out in Colorado for almost 10 years. That's her favorite place in the world. And she finally decided she was going to move out there to be around her grandkids, because I've been out there that long. And I said, well, I feel like something might be happening, Mom. You just need to know that. She's like, I'll take the risk. She was out there for about 8 months, I think, before, when I took the SC job, and then we had to move back here. And so she's like, man, you're killing me. But she does a lot for us. And the kids are getting a little bit older. My eldest is a senior, and she's driving now, and those sort of types of things. And so we just kind of try to figure it out. I mean, it's not easy. But it's one thing. It was almost a nice benefit of COVID. I was able to go introduce myself to my children and spend a little more time at home around them. Now, I was working insane hours in our little home office, but at least we were in the same house a lot together, and we could do more meals together and those different types of things, and that was nice.
Now, you've mentioned your faith a couple times. What role does that play in your basketball coaching, in your overall aspect of being a man of character?
Sure, everything. I mean, it's I'm definitely not here for all the money. This is small college basketball. I'm not here for all the glory. I'm in the middle of, I'm a city boy in central Kansas right now, and it's there's a lot of cultural things that I'm adjusting to with that. The hours are insane. I've probably been working 17, 18 hours most of the last few months trying to get everything where we need it to be. 99% of the people in the world have no idea who I am. It's literally, if my faith in that calling is not driving everything I'm going through, then, man, why are we doing here? We mentioned how I had a pretty good, stretch there where I was, well taken care of and had a lot of privileges. But my wife and I have also at one point trying to build this resume. We were in 9 houses in 14 years.
Wow.
We spent time on food stamps. We've been through a lot, trying to do this thing. And if you don't have that motivation and that drive as far as why you're doing this, then what is the point of all that? What is the point of putting, my eldest, she's a senior now, but this is her 3rd high school in 4 years. Wow. All we've been trying to generate and build in this thing. I say it all the time, but if my only motivation is to dedicate my life to teaching people how to bounce a silly rubber ball and put it in a net, I mean, how unfulfilling is that? Mm-hmm. But if I'm using that beautiful game that I adore so much to achieve, much more lofty ideals, then that's something that we can really get behind. And we do. We really look at it as a mission field for us. Now, I'm not the preachiest coach, but what I hope to do is live by example. And the predominant message of the Bible is to love. And we love fiercely out here. And we believe with a childlike faith, and we jump 2 feet first on everything we do. Our first trip to Colorado, we felt called to a situation out there. We moved out there. We had no house. We had no full-time jobs. We didn't know anybody there, and we just jumped. And it ended up being one of the more rewarding moments of our lives, and we did some special things, I think. But that's kind of how we've been doing this journey. But when you have that conviction that you're doing it for the right reasons, that God's in control and He's using you, and those highs and lows are pretty manageable, and it's an exciting, special thing to be a part of.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for making the time. Adam Hooker, Coach Hooker on Twitter. He is the head men's basketball coach at Sterling College. Adam, thanks so much for making the time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
And again, Adam Hooker, make sure you check him out on Twitter at Coach Hooker. With that, I'm out. And make sure you listen to somebody's stories, because it will make your story much better, less ignorant, and more impactful. So just take the time to listen, unlearn what you do not know, and relearn what will make you better.